right, ladies and gentlemen, it is good to be back. It has been a few long days, but a much needed vacation. I missed you all, and I have a guest with me. So I want to introduce my guest to you. My guest to you is the CEO and president of, I think the big name is Cake Enterprises, and but also as CURRNT Cannabis. So I will let Daniel Wise introduce himself. Welcome, my guest, Daniel Wise.
Hey,
Hi,
how are you, bro?
Daniel.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for being here. So we're on right now, and there's a good handful of people. the the regular bunch jump on pretty quick, and then
Yeah.
a few people, will travel in later on. So take a moment, introduce yourself, say
Yeah.
hi.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks for providing the platform for us. Yeah, my name is Daniel Wise. I'm the founder and CEO of Cake Enterprises. And we have a couple different brands, as you mentioned, underneath that, our primary retail brand being the Cake House. So I started in the cannabis industry in Southern California back in 2015, just prior to the passing of November Proposition 64, which allowed for commercial cannabis operations. So I'm from Texas originally. I joined the military out of Texas and ended up being stationed in Southern California for the majority of my military career. So then when I got out, as I was going through the transition process, I was medically separated. So as I was going through that process, I was at the Naval Hospital in San Diego for about a year. I was on a deployment, and then ended up getting sent back to a trauma center at Walter Reed, which is in Washington, D.C., and then ultimately back to Balboa, where I'm from here, where I was stationed. Well, I was out of Camp Pendleton initially, but the Naval Hospital in San Diego is for Marines and Navy that are going through that separation process. So as I was going through that process, I had a bunch of buddies, in the military. We're used to moving around a bunch, so you make a lot of new friends, and you move to a new unit, and it's like, within 15 minutes, you feel like you're best friends with everybody. So, a year is a long time to be in that situation with a group of guys, and it's a tough situation to be in. Even the guys that are the top performers, that they're the best at what they do, that are promoting fast, that are extremely valuable to the operation of the military. Once you start that medical process, you become less and less valuable because you're not deployable. They can't put you with a unit. They can't attach you to anybody. So a lot of times those guys kind of get forgotten. I don't think it's done intentionally. It's just kind of the nature of the military system. So, where I was from in Texas, and then obviously when I was in the military, I never had used cannabis before. I had no idea that there was any sort of legal.
You got a Texas fan right here.
I had absolutely no idea, going in, I guess, sheltered growing up, and so I had no idea. So when these guys started talking about some of these products, I'm like, man, what are these guys doing? And obviously they were still in, so they were going through the process of like trying to get 1-to-1 ratio products like Rick Simpson oils, those types of products, then more medical grade type products, full spectrum. And so I just started paying attention, and I noticed like these products were, a couple of my really close friends, one of my closest friend probably through that process, his name was Matt. I just saw how he went from, he was going through a divorce and dealing with PTSD. He had all of these issues, and he was trying to find another job. His military career had ended, and it just kind of blew his life up. And he started doing these 1-to-1 ratioed products, and it was like within a month, it was like you flipped a switch with this guy, and he puts his family back together. He's running like a big farm in Vista now. He's actually part of a program for veterans where they do this agriculture training program that you can use your VA for. So I saw what it did to him, and I'm just like, man, there's got to be something here. So just like everybody else, I started just reading any book that I could get initially to just teach me about the plant. I started reading a lot of the stuff out of Israel with the institute there, and a lot of the science. So as I was getting out, obviously myself, I was in a position where, I was in the military. This was supposed to be my career. I was good at what I did. I was promoting. I had just had my first child, my son, who's 5 now. So I was also looking for, like, what are we going to do next here? And so I started a nonprofit organization called Veteran Medical Alternatives, VMA. We were based out of Riverside County, and that was a mutual benefit nonprofit corporation. Kind of old school medical rules in California. So we were able to do that. And our whole mission, our goal, and it continues to this day, was to try and create different cannabinoid strains that would treat specific ailments related to veterans, like chronic pain, depression, anxiety, PTSD, issues with traumatic brain injuries, and those types of issues.
Well,
So
not to cut you off, but that's one thing that I'm so thankful for in these past few years, that I've really dedicated myself to getting myself in the cannabis community and learning, is how developed these terps are in terms of medical value, and just blending different strains and coming up with different and new strains with the different terps, how they're specifically targeting these different ailments. It's fantastic.
yeah, it's incredible. And I think that we're just scratching the surface in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
there's millions of different cannabinoid combinations, right? I think there's something like 167, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Maybe somebody in the comments is smarter than me and they know exactly. But so, all of those combinations, I think that we're just scratching the surface of figuring out what we can accomplish with that. And then, just when you look at the body's endocannabinoid system, and you look at how long it takes, like a pharmaceutical company, to create something that will respond to our receptors. And the most receptors that the human body has is C1 and C2 receptors, which their primary application is accepting CBD and THC into the body, right? And processing it to help us with different ailments. So I think we're just scratching the surface, and we wanted to kind of be at the forefront of, like, let's focus specifically on the ailments that disproportionately, veterans are impacted by, and see if we can really tackle those issues. So it was one of those things. I was coming into the industry. I was just my first go at it. So I had a 1,500 square foot greenhouse that I didn't have the money to go out and get investors and do anything major. It was a nice greenhouse. I built it completely myself, me and my dad. When I had gotten out of the military, I had been given a little bit of money as a severance, like, 25, 30,000, which at the time was more than I had ever seen in one chunk. Being active duty military, enlisted, we survive, but it's not a wealth path, that's for sure. And so all of that money we used to invest in this greenhouse. My dad invested some money. It was a family type kind of operation. And then Prop 64 passed. And so my greenhouse then became uncompliant based off of the zoning, because now it went from medical to commercial operations. So pretty much overnight, we were able to pull out like one harvest from it, which it was our first harvest. So it wasn't, super high quality product. It was our first go round. And then we actually had to shut down that operation due to the zoning. So anybody who does cannabis in California knows we call it prohibition through zoning in California, where even when they allow it, they make the zoning so restrictive that it makes it very, very difficult to navigate in the cities. Not impossible, just extremely difficult and
Difficult.
yeah, competitive.
I have a lot of friends in California. They all say the same thing.
Yeah. It's, I think California is hard anyway because of, all the environmental stuff, which is great. You know what I mean? We don't want buildings falling on people. We don't want any of these types of issues. So, we jump through the hoops with the cities. We view it as a partnership with the city. But certainly with cannabis, the city has you even under more of a strict microscope than they would a regular developer, which is already, pretty under the microscope when it comes to trying to put these projects in. So once Prop 64 passed, we realized, like, okay, now there's this massive opportunity for us to develop a real, commercial enterprise. So we started developing projects in different cities. We entered the lotteries and different processing for different licenses. We won a couple of them. We lost a lot of them. Obviously, at the beginning, we're still trying to figure out there was no blueprint, right? We had basically Colorado to follow, but Colorado's market, if you look at it, couldn't be more opposite than California in the way that they do it.
It's a completely different culture, and it's a completely different working relationship with their local government.
Yes. Yeah. And business structure because of their seed to sale process. So you can't just be a retailer. Initially, I think they changed that, but initially it was you had to do everything.
Now they just changed a whole bunch of stuff in Colorado. Now they've doubled the legal limit you're allowed to carry now. I think they're gonna wipe that out and just extend it to I think pounds. I don't think it's gonna be ounces anymore because they need people to be able to transport it, which is the next big industry.
Right.
Just transporters, a truck just carrying around cannabis everywhere.
Right. Yeah, I think we're starting to see, and I think that's the second phase of most of these industries is the logistics of it, right? Building out all of that infrastructure that it takes to create hyper efficient logistics systems. So yeah, I totally agree. You know, Colorado's following that same path that really any industry takes in terms of the different feasibilities and adoptabilities that the company has along the way. Yeah, so we started this commercial cannabis development process. And really just behind this mission that we have as it pertains to veterans. Now we've been able to grow the business to a place, you know, where we've got a couple different dozen retail projects across California. You know, we've got all of these stores coming online. Yeah, we're just so blessed to have the amount of support that we have when it comes to the cities that we're operating in. They just, when they hear the mission of what we're trying to accomplish and they realize like, wow, these guys really have a why behind this. Like they're grassroots, they're veteran owned. They really have a mission here that goes beyond just like trying to build some massive multi-state cannabis operator, and try to pump up the value and sell it off before you actually have to do any work, you know? All of our stuff has really just been from the ground up. You know, at the beginning, we invested what money we had. We put, you know, obviously when you're starting something like this, you put everything at risk and you're maxing out credit cards,
your credit cards, your house, you start selling stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, I think just from like an entrepreneurial note too, it's like, I don't think there's any other way to do it. Right. It's like, if you want to go all into something, you really just have to burn the ships, as they say, you know, that story.
I've got a few businesses under my belt. I've done it.
Yeah.
Burn the ships. It's fun.
Yeah. So everything really culminated to, you know, Cake Enterprises, the Cake House retail brand that we have, all of the other components of that. We have all of these like really awesome programs that we do that we've partnered with other companies like HVGC.
So we got a quick question here. I just want to get to him because Dan's a nice guy. So we want to just see if we can get this answered for him.
Yeah.
Are you currently denied military benefits if you use cannabis?
No. So the VA is not going to deny your benefits if you use cannabis. This has been my experience and personal people around me. So if you're in another state or something, I don't want to speak for the VA's rules. They might be a little more flexible in California, understanding the lay of the land. If you're in like, I don't want to talk about any states, but like Kentucky, maybe not the best, maybe not the best option. I don't want people to go out and do it because I said so and then get into trouble.
Tammy's from Kentucky.
Okay, I don't know. I was just.
It's bad in Kentucky. McConnell's in Kentucky, and he's anti-weed everything.
Yeah,
it's not good in Kentucky.
But I think there's still a fear because the VA they haven't come out and really taken a stance, right? In terms of like, okay, this is fine. So, you know, this is even one of the things that we talked about. We have a city right now where we have a license where it's a medical only license because the local jurisdictions can decide if they want adult use, recreational or medical. And, you know, 9 out of 10 are like, you know, if we're going to do it, let's do it full throttle and give out the recreational license. Some of them are still medical. And I don't think, you know, the product is the product, right? So we're carrying these medical grade products in the recreational stores. So really all it does is just, you know, the medical stores create an extra step and prohibit some users, a lot of veterans, and this store's in North County, California, San Diego County. So it's the highest veteran per capita rate in the United States. So, you know, our pitch to the city is like, hey, let us go recreational. a lot of these guys are scared to come in and get a medical recommendation because they think that they might create an issue with the VA. So if we open it up where somebody just has to scan their ID, then, you know, those paranoias go away. And obviously it would help if the VA would pick a direction, but I think they're kind of trapped. There's so much science to support it for cannabis and for veterans that they don't want to come out and oppose it, but it's like they can't really support it yet because federally it hasn't been descheduled.
Well, that's the other question I was going to ask you. It's a perfect segue. So I'm sorry, I'm leaning like one way or another. It's
I know
not,
I am too.
it's not my computer, so I'm not used to this screen. But Kamala Harris, no, not a politic thing, but Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, they seem to have this love-hate relationship with, I don't know if that's me squeaking. They seem to have this love-hate relationship. Joe Biden seems to be very conservative when it comes to marijuana. We saw this just recently that he, you know, admonished part of his team for admitting to cannabis use, asked them to step down. But Kamala Harris says, "Oh, we're gonna, you know, deschedule. We're gonna wreck everything for the whole United States, a federal program." Now, I forgot what state, but there's 2 Republicans right now pushing a bill to on a federal level to legalize marijuana, 50 states across the board.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the right thing to do? Do you think that, because right now the cannabis industry has the United States government, pardon my French, by the balls. Once the United States government says it's federal, we're in control. What do you think happens? Right. It's a fair question, right?
Absolutely a fair question. And this is something, you know, my position in terms of leading this company, right, and leading the investors and all of the people that have put money into what I'm doing. You know, my job is frequently I got to take a step back and look at, okay, where's big picture, where's the ship headed, right? We're doing all of these different things as we go. But how do some of these bigger decisions affect us? So I spend a lot of time evaluating some of this stuff. So, yeah, and not to get into politics at all. This is speaking strictly from how it affects my business perspective, right?
Cannabis, yeah. Speaking from cannabis.
Yeah, I think it has to happen, right? So we have to accept that happening, you know, the happening of this is necessary, right? In order for the industry to move forward and really reach a point where it's fully destigmatized, we have to do that, right? It has to happen. So I think when you look at how we do that, first of all, I think it's going to take a long time, right? I think if they came out tomorrow and said, "Oh, cheers, yeah, well, if you're going to go first, then I'll join you."
Go ahead, let's go.
I've got the chillum today.
All right, let's take a quick break from the serious conversation. What are you smoking on? What are you smoking on?
I am smoking on, let me see what I got here. A company called RIP, RIPP. And I think this is Amnesia Haze. Kind of old school.
I like that. That's good. The old Amnesia. Yeah.
You know.
I still have 3 seeds. I haven't popped them yet.
Oh, really?
3 Amnesia seeds. Yeah, that's a good strain. This is actually one of mine from about a year ago. I grew a couple of plants just for me. It's Northern Lights.
Oh, wow. That's great.
It's just a nice smooth, you know, if you've had Northern Lights before, it's nice and smooth.
Absolutely. That's great. Heavy indica, right? Pretty heavy indica, yeah.
20. I don't know how potent this was. This was not my best work. This was like grown in between a move that me and my wife made, and so I had a. It wasn't my best work, but it's probably above 20%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my first harvest in my greenhouse, I think I was at like 14%, you know, and I was like,
Yeah.
yes, double digits, you know, we're
Yeah,
growing here.
that's what you hope for, sure.
Yeah,
You're just
absolutely.
figuring it out, figuring it out.
But yeah, so absolutely right. We have to deschedule. We have to get rid of all cannabis charges. That has to happen right away. But then all of the other stuff I think can take time, right? So when you look at if it happened tomorrow.
Well, wait. I don't mean to cut you off, but let's hit that real quick. So, in terms of dropping all these low scheduled, charges for people with, small amounts of marijuana, or selling an ounce, or selling a few grams, all these really non-violent charges, like they didn't kill anybody. It was just weed. Do you think there needs to be some sort of retribution, because those people's lives have been altered? You can't get a job because most people, they're listed as a felony. You can't get a job. It's a huge, huge stigma that these people are writing down. I think there needs to be some level of a restorative justice.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. So yeah, these people's lives were impacted, right, in a way that can never be fully undone, right? All we can do is the best from here moving forward, understanding, the issues and the horrible things and the families and the lives that were destroyed with the war on drugs, right? All we can do is move forward from that. So I think absolutely I agree with that.
Do you think it could come in the form of some sort of entry into the cannabis field, like some sort of maybe a coalition or a co-op of people who have been wronged through that, and some way that they could benefit with either the government paying for their cannabis, or the government giving them an option to have some type of ownership in a cannabis company?
Yeah, so in California, this is fairly common for us. A lot of the cities, I'd say over the last 3 years, in probably half the cities that we go into, there's a social equity component of that, right? And there's a different varying level of percentage. One of the things that
it's not how it is in all the other states. That's why I want you to tell people about this in California.
Right. So California has these programs, and I have my own opinion on these programs in terms of the way that they could be made better from my position, in terms of being the one that's raising the money, dealing with the business issues, going through these processes. So I have a couple of ideas.
There's good and bad. There's good and bad.
There's good and bad, right? But I think I have a solution that I feel like solves this for California and solves it for everywhere if they were to adopt some of these things, just based off my feedback, operating and working with some of these social equity applicants and overcoming these hurdles alongside them, right? Because we view these as absolute partnerships. And in a lot of cases, we're working with veterans that we find. We always look for veteran first social equity applicants. If we can find somebody who was a veteran and also impacted by the war on drugs, that's like a grand slam for us, right? That person's a partner with us for life. So in California, in a lot of cities, they have what's called social equity programs. So I'll give an example of this, right? Los Angeles, they just did a round of licensing. They gave out 200 licenses, and there were 804 people that submitted for those licenses. You went through a scoring process. If you were in the top 200, you got the license. If you weren't, you didn't, right? Every one of those licenses had to have a social equity component to that, meaning that they gave us specific zip codes. They gave us specific charges that the person could have. They gave us these different qualifying measures, income, some of these other things, right? And so in order for us to submit that license, we have to have partnered with us a social equity applicant that meets 2 out of the 3 qualifications. And the 3 qualifications are they made a certain income below a certain line of poverty. Right. They were from the zip codes, which the city identified. And there was a bunch of disputes about that because they left out some zip codes that the members of were like, well, we're just as impacted as this zip code right next to us. So that turned into a whole thing also. But ultimately, the city decided these dozen zip codes, if you're from here, then you were more impacted by the war on drugs, and therefore you deserve a leg up in this opportunity. So based off of those rules, or you could have a nonviolent cannabis felony within the last 5 years.
Right.
So those were the 3 qualifying factors. They had to meet 2 out of those 3. So that license, then we're partnered with a social equity applicant for the life of that license. And that's what allows us to do that opportunity there. There's a lot of stuff that happens with these guys where they'll use somebody, right? Where they'll say, okay, you're on our license, but just go away. We never want to see you. We'll send you a check every month, right? And then there's nobody really looking over these. There are people looking over their shoulders, but if you're a grimy multi-state operator, there's things that you can do, just like any business. There's things that you can do where if you don't want to be a person who's going to keep your word, you can structure things certain ways, and you can have things in various ways that could manipulate the city and the social equity applicant. So it gets very, very dirty, these programs, right? But I think that the city,
in certain states, again, I'm not cutting you off, but certain states will specifically sort of overlap more of their regulations as opposed to other states' regulations. So a lot of these billion-dollar companies, which really don't deserve, look, it'd be nice to grow a cannabis company. I mean, you've grown one. You'd love to have $1 billion. I get it. But these companies that are coming in with billions of dollars already are doing some of the most harmful things to the cannabis community. And they're getting away with stuff like that.
right?
Because they're in so many states and it's so much tax revenue coming in, they're getting away with it.
Yeah. And I think what they're getting away with is what everybody gets away with in every business every day. The only difference is now we're in the cannabis industry, so there's this like heightened microscope on it, so people notice it more, right? But a lot of this stuff is just the corporate games that are being played at any level in any big company that's doing more than 25 million in revenue, right? And I don't want to make, a blanket accusation, right? But the whole structure is kind of built in a certain way that we all understand
the common sense part of
it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
In LA, they had the regulations where the social equity applicant has to receive 51% of the profits of the dispensary. That was the rule in LA, right?
Okay.
So this creates an issue. And here's where I totally agree with the program. I think it's being implemented wrong, right? First of all, 51% of the profits, the profits are of a company are not always representative of how much that company is making in terms of money, right? Then there's salaries, there's
overhead, all the expenses. You're lucky if there's profit. I know.
Well, yeah, I mean, for the first 6 months in these stores, there isn't, right? You're building up to a certain point where you can get over your overhead and move on from there. So they create massive issues by doing that, right? So think about this. So this company is technically 51% owned by this social equity applicant on paper. So when you're going to try and and keep in mind the qualifications, we've already verified that the person makes none or very little money, that they live in an area of the city that's disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, and or they have a felony charge. So then when you're trying to go out and you're trying to implement this business, people outside of the Department of Cannabis Regulations in LA, excuse my French, don't give a shit if you're a social equity applicant or not. They're running a business, they're vendors, they're banks, they're these. And so in a lot of cases, it creates these massive roadblocks that slow these projects down, in some cases years, because you can't navigate in the same way that you need to. Plus, it makes it very difficult for the state and for the city to track if this person's even being given any money, right? So I think that a better way to do it is that they make every license in the state of California. Think about this, right? So right now it's probably like, if I had to venture a guess, I'd say 20% of the licenses that are given out are social equity. And that's a complete guess. I have no way to get that data.
I was hearing higher numbers at this point.
Higher than that at this point?
I heard higher. I heard higher than 30%. I heard it was approaching 35%. But I don't have any way to back that up. I don't have data in front of me. I'm sure I can find it somehow, but
yes,
I don't have that data. but that's
More than
what I'm
20,
hearing.
less than 50, we'll say.
Yeah, definitely less than it can't be. I mean, it's it can't be more than 50.
All right.
Yeah.
So my solution to this is that instead of having, we'll call it 40% of the licenses with these social equity programs where they get this high percentage, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if we made it where the state, so these are local license rules. The state of California has no social equity rules at all. They don't care if your license is social equity or not. If you get the local license, you get your state license, right? So I think the way that it should actually be done is it should be attached to your state license, and every state license, you're required to have a social equity attached that owns 5% of the gross revenue of the facility. So when you do it off of the gross, 5% of the gross could be equivalent to 51
it's not a bad
profits.
That's not a bad number, especially if every license is doing it.
Exactly. And then it requires every license to be partnered. And they could even make it where it had to be somebody, right, who had one of their charges dropped. So if you made it where it had to be that person gets 5% of a dispensary. I mean, I can tell you, there's dispensaries that are doing more than $3 million a month in revenue. We don't touch a site unless we think it can do north of 400,000 or 500,000 a month in revenue, right? So 5%, you're probably talking about 50,000 a month, 50,000 to 250,000 a month that would be potentially going to this social equity applicant, depending on the size of the facility and the revenue. But the stores in California do really, really well with revenue. And then it's very easy to track because gross revenue, you can't manipulate that, right? You know exactly how many grams of cannabis are being sold. The state would be able to know 100%. It would be part of the audit review system that money was going directly to that social equity applicant.
Right.
And then it eliminates the issues for me as an operator because I can go get my banking. They're a minority interest holder. I can continue to operate and work as I need to and can continue to move my business forward, which is good for all the social equity applicants, attached to it. Because if I create this retail chain, then that creates more value for all of it, right? And I think if they did that, problem solved. And then there's no sort of delays at the local level. There's no issues with the processing with the cities. I think that solves
everything sort of takes care of itself, because on the
Absolutely.
local level, that money is getting dispersed and can be tracked immediately.
Immediately.
On the state level, that money can be tracked and dispersed as it sees fit. And on the federal level, everything's still coming in anyway. They're never going to not pay attention to that.
No, you have 3 checks and balances to make sure that the company is
that's
doing
a win-win-win situation.
Win-win. Absolutely.
Everybody's happy. So then why do you think they're not doing it? What do they have to gain?
I don't think anybody thought of it.
That's what I'm missing in California. What's the holdout? Why are they fighting?
I mean, I haven't had a chance to speak to any of the state legislators with that idea or talk directly to the BCC. I don't think that I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I don't think anybody's thought of it. And 2, I don't think that the state has the right people advising them, right? Because the only way that you would know this is if you went and got a license in LA like I did, and you were trying to open up bank accounts and get vendors, and they're saying, well, the majority interest holder of your company is a felon, right? So if you're not in that position where you're dealing with those direct issues and you say, hey, I have a better way, it's a better way for everybody, right? There's no it eliminates any gray area in it at all for the state, for the social equity applicant, for the company. The company can still raise money, operate. And some of these social equity programs, they try to get to it has to be 51%. So because we don't want to screw over.
They get very specific.
Way too specific, right? And that's what government does sometimes is instead of creating a solution like this, which is very simple, they make it very, very, very complicated. And that's what these cities are doing. And it's very simple to me.
See, from day one, now I can only say that I've really been involved in the cannabis industry for the last couple of years. But, I kind of stuck my foot in the door and I just refused to walk away. And, so now my voice means something. I don't know how much, but something. But I've had a solution that I think the cannabis industry needs to regulate and police itself. And the government can't come in and kind of tell us or tell the cannabis industry, well, you got to do it this way, this way, this way, follow our rules and regulations, because if it becomes federal, then the states can't dictate how it goes. It has to be one way, a uniform way that every state follows.
Yes.
So, and that's cannabis. I mean, the metaphor is there for the people that, if you want to see it, the metaphor is there. It's the standard. You just have a standard, and then the real cannabis people will be the ones that shine, not these corporate people that just have money that are coming in because they have the money to come in and sway the legislation and the bill writers and all these politicians that just want the money.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's we can't do much about about big pharma and big tobacco in terms of their influence, right?
They're going to be there.
It's not even worth wasting a conversation on, because they're so powerful that there's nothing you can do except combat them in your own way. And in my mind, if big tobacco comes in and they open a chain of retail dispensaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the cannabis consumers all float over to those dispensaries, then in my mind, I've been betrayed by the consumer base, right? And that's how I'm going to look at it, because they're the ones that are going to have control over that. And they're the ones that are going to decide, okay, I'm going to take my business from the cake house and I'm going to give it to Camel, whatever the hell they're going to call their chain of dispensaries, right?
Right.
So I think that in the same way, if I'm selling product that hasn't been lab tested, I've now violated the trust of my consumers, So I think it's this mutual relationship where by the time they do that, I'm hoping that we can create like a soundness to the consumer base of the industry where they won't have it,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really our only way to combat that, because obviously they have access to unlimited money and can skew all of the perceptions of the media and politicians.
So for the consumer, on the consumer end, okay, I'm consumer, Bob Smith. I come into Cake hypothetical situation. I come into Cake Enterprises. I buy, your sativa, 27%. But no, that's a bad example. All right, never mind. I talked myself out of giving that example. That's a bad example. All right. I'll let that one go. We're live. Sometimes the thought just doesn't go the way you think it goes.
I do that all the time. I do some terrible analogies sometimes.
Hey, we're human. It happens.
Yep, absolutely. Analogies, you got to be careful, because sometimes you start going down a road and then
you go down a road and it just the where I was going, it wasn't the right road. It's okay. My viewers have seen me make a couple of funny gaffes. It happens. So you said you have a 5-year-old.
I do, yeah, 5-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter.
Okay, so you got one of each at least.
One of each, yep. I stopped because that was it, one of each.
Well, you sir learned your lesson. I apparently did not. I have 5.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, my big one is turning 21 in a couple days, and the baby just turned 1 last month. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I didn't
learn. That's a range. But at least you have help, right? The baby's probably easier.
Well, the baby's easier. So the 10-year-old who's going to be 11, he's a good baby helper. He does bottles. He does playtime. He's pretty good.
Wow. That's
Not
awesome.
bad.
That was a smart strategy. My thinking was, I was like, I want to have my kids young so that I can have, the most time with them in terms of my son is 5. So when he graduates high school, I'll still be in my 30s, So I'm like, I should feel probably just like I do right now, I hope, unless, something crazy happens.
I can tell you, I like I told you, I wasn't military, but I was very athletic, and I was this close to playing pro hockey.
Really?
So I was always in great shape. Yeah, it's a long story. I was
Oh,
always in great
you're
shape.
out of the bed then, obviously, huh?
Yeah. But I tell you, kids find a way to just make you get fat, make you get lazy. It does. It does. It takes some toll on you. It happens.
I know. I just posted this. I just did this post on LinkedIn though, where I said that I felt like people, entrepreneurs specifically with kids, have an advantage over people that don't.
Mhm.
And
Because you have no choice. Yeah.
right, there's like this superpower that comes with having no other option,
Hey,
right? And people think it's a negative. It's
mm,
not. If you look
no.
at the history, people that are given everything almost
Mhm.
always turn out to be nothing. And
Mhm.
people who are given nothing and come from these horrible, horrible situations,
Fight
right? I
for
mean,
it. They have to fight for it.
yeah, you got to fight through it. You got to grind
Yeah.
for every single thing that you have. And it
See
just
how
creates resilience that leads to success, I think, you know?
Yeah. See, I'll tell you a quick story. I know I've kept you a while, so I don't want you to, but
Oh, no, Sunday afternoon.
all right. Well, that's
Love
right. You're in California, so it's 9 o'clock here. So
Oh, yeah.
I can sense my wife going, get off the fucking computer. Like, it's just truth. But I'll tell you a quick story. So, the entrepreneurial thing. So I a few years ago, I started a business, and hard enough as it is to start a business, especially in the Philly area, the Philly suburbs, which is kind of like in California, it'd be maybe a watered down version of Rodeo Drive, kind of Beverly Hills. So there's money over here, but it's not as much as Hollywood. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So I started it, and while I'm starting the business from scratch, my wife and I just had our second child, my third, our second. So I got a newborn baby in my arm, a 3-year old pulling on me, wanting daddy attention, and my wife had a car accident that messed up her back. So this is all in the middle of while I'm starting a brand new business. And I tell people this story, other entrepreneurs, and they get it. I'm making phone calls like this with my phone in my ear, holding the baby, giving him the bottle, writing down information, talking to people, and my 3-year old is climbing up my back. And I built a $3 million business in the Philadelphia suburbs.
That's amazing. Yeah. Because you didn't have
That's
any other option, you know?
I didn't have another option.
Right.
I had to succeed.
Yeah.
I had to succeed. So I also try to like save people. Like I try to bring them, be your own boss, be an entrepreneur, work on your dream. So I do that for
Yeah.
people. So I'm happy to see, somebody else working on their dream and living their dream. And I'm always an advocate for the entrepreneur.
Same. Yeah. Yeah. I try to keep, I have no interest in going corporate, you know? It's like that's not what got me here. So now that I've built this up, it's like I don't want to change. I still want to be in my mind, I'm still an entrepreneur. You know
Be
what I
a
mean?
normal person.
I'm an entrepreneur. And that's really the mentality of the whole company. Everybody on the team has some crazy story of, our chief operations officer, Charlena. She has a wild story of being homeless as a kid and all kinds of adversities that she's had to overcome. And she's, the very, very best at what she does. So it's like, there's just something crazy that happens when you don't have another option. And that entrepreneurial spirit is, in some people it's strong. It's unbreakable.
Yeah. You find a way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Dan, it's been 45 minutes. I'm gonna definitely just not risk it because my life may hang in the balance.
Absolutely. Yeah. Enjoy your Sunday evening.
But listen, it's been really fun. I'll keep in touch with you, and I'll send you the video as well. I'm gonna do some editing and stuff, and I'll shoot you the link, and
Awesome.
we'll talk.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for the platform and for chatting. It was great meeting you.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Have a
Yeah.
good night.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thank you.